Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. And in this video, I want to talk about the importance of learning how to sell ice to Eskimos. Now, I know it's a very strange thing to think about because when we use the phrase like, "Oh, it's like selling ice to Eskimos," that's essentially telling you don't sell to that person or demographic, right? And I'm going to give you a few reasons why it's almost a very important skill to learn, and it's kind of in a way made me very successful, right? Like you'd think, oh man, that person has more experience than me. Why would they ever want to do business with me, right? Like that person already has an ice igloo. Why would they ever want to buy my ice, right? And one of the things that I found out is that it's much easier to sell somebody who has experience with your product than someone who does not, right? So, for example, I have like three juicers at home. And if you ever have gone to the YouTube channel Discount Juicers, that guy has a million juicers, John Kohler. I've talked to him on the phone. I've emailed him, and I've bought a couple of juicers from him. He has so many videos on juicing, and he's the first one to buy a juicer, whether it's like the newest model or like a cheap knockoff from Amazon, he's like the first one to buy it, right? And so, one of the things I found out is that, hey, if this person has experience with your product, they're probably the first in line who want to buy, even if they're not. Even if your product is not the best, right? So, one of the biggest fears I know that I had, like, I remember when I first made appointments trying to buy real estate, I would freak out because I had never bought a house before in my life, right? I heard about strategies with no money, no credit. I remember I sent some letters, and then a potential home seller would call me, and then I freaked out because, like, why are you calling me? I've never bought real estate before. Although I had a desire to buy it, there was an internal dialogue in my mind preventing me from actually going to those appointments. And then when I actually did go to those appointments, I was like kind of pretending that I knew what I was talking about. And then I was too afraid to follow up and complete the transaction, right? Like I would have this internal dialogue in my mind. That person has real estate and I don't. And therefore, I'm not worthy of buying it or something like that. And one of the reasons that I think I used to think like that is because, when I was a little kid, I was told all the time that I wasn't worthy of doing something because I didn't meet somebody's arbitrary standards, and a lot of it is related to, oh, you don't have enough experience, right? And now that I'm older, I've thought this for a while as an adult, is that I would never tell anybody young, who's a young kid, that they're not worthy of doing something because they can't meet some arbitrary standards or they don't have experience. In fact, people who don't have experience are probably some of the best learners because they're not following tradition, right? It's kind of like what Bruce Lee used to say is that, tradition is very rigid, but at the same time, you want to have like a mix of what was there before versus something new. And so, we don't want to, as a society, always adhere to what was there before, or else we're going to essentially be in that situation of grandma's ham. I don't know if you ever heard that story, but basically, there's a story supposedly about how many generations ago they started to put ham and cut the corners before they put it in the oven or something like that, right? And then somebody asked their mother like, why do we cut the corners of the ham and put it in the oven? And then the mother said, I don't know. That's what my mother did. And then they asked the grandma, like, why do you do that? And then, she said something like, I don't know. That's what my mother did because it must have made the ham tastier or something to release all the juices out or something like that. And then they asked the grandma's mom why they do that, and basically it's because ovens back then weren't big enough to fit the size of ham, so they had to cut the corners off, right? And so back to my point, the reason why it's actually better for most cases for people to not have too much experience in what it is that they're doing is because they're not rigidly following tradition, right? So that fear of someone having more experience than you shouldn't even cross your mind because in my experience, most people like to do business with you as long as you're enthusiastic and have a positive attitude. Like having a positive attitude especially to someone who is a buyer, is really addicting. It does not matter whether you have experience or not. But again, one of the internal dialogues that we have is that, hey, this Eskimo who has all the experience with ice wouldn't want my ice, right? Like I should sell to someone who lives in the desert and has no experience with ice, and it's kind of counterintuitive, but they're probably harder to sell, right? This is true for a lot of things, and again, take it for what you will. But I would rather sell somebody who has experience with my product, even more experience than me, than someone who has absolutely no experience. And so there's a saying that I heard when I first took one of these marketing classes online, where it's like somebody who has 50 pairs of shoes is much more likely to buy a 51st pair than somebody who's never bought shoes, right? Is that funny? And this is true of anything. It's true of technology. It's true of real estate. It's true of fashion, shoes. Again, you can sell someone much easier if they have experience with your product and they're much more knowledgeable than you than someone who has absolutely no experience. And I gave the example about juicers, but that's true of myself too. Like I am the only person that I know within my personal network who does juicing, right? I know people on the internet who do it. And if somebody knocked at my door and said, hey, like, we got this awesome new juicer and look at all these features, I'd be the first one to buy. And I have like three juicers at home. And I have one that I don't even use, right? So the person who's knocking on my door and trying to sell me a juicer, I'm probably the best candidate for that than anybody I know, right? Because that juicer is essentially ice and I am the Eskimo, right? I have a lot more experience than everybody else, and I am the first person to ever buy that, right? And so don't be afraid of selling ice to an Eskimo. The other thing too is that there's always this fear that we have, and one of the biggest fears I have is that, oh, if I try to sell ice to an Eskimo, they're going to see my agenda of wanting to make money. But the most important thing is when we try to sell anything is that we're actually trying to be problem solvers, right? So we want to be problem solvers. So one of the things that I want to, like, if someone were to try to sell me a juicer, maybe instead of just selling not only the juicer, they could sell me a whole package, right? So basically, someone would come to my house, make the juice for me. I don't have that much time. Ooh, I'd be interested in that, right? So don't think just because like somebody has more knowledge than you that you can't sell them, quote, the ice, right? And we all need to make money. Every single job out there is a sales job. It doesn't matter if you're trucking, fast food, teaching. Every job is a sales job because what job? Like think about it, there's a product or service being sold, whether it's your labor, whether it's your time, whether it's your quote knowledge, every job is a sales job. So I don't know why people do this thing where it's like, oh man, you just want to sell me something, right? Whereas, okay, you might work a useless job in the government. No offense to you if you actually work in the government, but I say that because I was reading this article about how the California government spent billions of dollars, quote, solving the homeless crisis, and it's worse than ever. But what I'm saying is that every job is, quote, a sales job, even in government, right? You know that the large institutions, they have like big budgets, right? And if they don't spend it, their budgets get reduced. So what they do is they make useless make work to sell that they need the budget, right? Every job is a sales and marketing job to tell other people, hey, this is why I'm needed. Even cops, right? Like cops have ticket quotas. Those are actually sales quotas, right? You make enough revenue for your police department, they're happy. And unlike a regular sale, you don't have to use the force and authority of the government to get them to buy from you. Okay, so don't be afraid that people will quote see your agenda to make money. But again, really important for us to learn how to sell ice to an Eskimo. And one of the things that you might learn is by being a problem solver is like, hey, maybe the ice that the Eskimo uses to build the house is not of good quality, or maybe get some a water filtration system so that can make better ice, or maybe because your ice is made in a commercial a commercial's space where it's just dedicated to make the highest quality of ice, you could sell that to the Eskimo, right? So just because someone has a product and they have a lot of experience with it, don't be afraid to sell them. Okay? Like I know even for myself, whatever I have right now, I'm probably the biggest candidate, maybe sucker if you want to call me that, for the product you're trying to sell. If I bought like um several versions of it years ago. And again, the easiest way that I know that I'm like this is because every time there's a video game remake or re-release on a new system for a video game that I bought last year, but it's on a new system and nothing has changed about that video game, I'm gonna be the first one in line to buy. It's like, okay, you bought this game, like the better version of the game on the personal computer, yet you're gonna buy a worse version of the game on the Switch, and I'm the first person to buy, right? You just sold ice to an Eskimo. The ice is the video game, and I'm the sucker or the Eskimo. All right, all right. Well, that's it for today. Have a great day, everybody, and we will speak next time.